Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Rise City Online. My name is Pete, and one of the pastors here. And man, I'm just excited to continue talking about the book of John together. And I want to start just with kind of a question. Have you ever really worked yourself up for something that was coming up or an idea that you're involved in that you just thought was going to be awesome? But when it actually sort of came to pass, it turned out to be the opposite. It was just a disappointing letdown where you're just kind of like, oh, that is not what I thought it was going to be. Maybe you almost felt cheated. I remember the first time this happened to me when I was a little kid. Whenever we would read comic books or kids magazines, in the back, they'd always have these advertisements for the coolest stuff. But the coolest one by far was always, if you remember this, if you're my age, but X-ray glasses. I mean, I remember oh, we gotta have X-ray glasses. It'd be so awesome. My brother and I were like, this would be the coolest thing ever, And so finally, $1, it was early 80s, that was a lot of money, but this is worth it. So we scrounged pennies together and we sent it off in an envelope and waited. And then I remember the day it came back, packages in the mail. It's like, they're here, the X-ray glasses. We were so excited. It's gonna be so awesome. And we opened them up. And what we found out was they were just actually a pair of toy glasses that someone had drawn squiggly lines on. You couldn't even see out of them. It was ridiculous. I remember just holding them and being like, I just wasted $1 on this. Do you know how many candy cigarettes I could have bought for that? It was the 80s, people. But what a rip. I just felt so let down. And since growing up, I've definitely had more of those experiences, times in my life when I was sure that something was going to be awesome and it turned out to be not quite what I wanted it to be. I'd be so happy if I could, date this person or get this job. Soon you do and you realize it wasn't what you thought it was. Maybe it's a toxic work environment you want out of there. You find yourself regretting your old job. We've all had those experiences, right? Those times when it just wasn't what we thought it was going to be. But did you know that many of the people who first followed Jesus, these guys called disciples, probably found themselves with a very similar feeling at one time or another? Disappointment, letdown, confusion, maybe even anger, to the point that some of them are like, I'm out of here. This isn't worth it. Because Jesus was somebody that came to them with a lot of expectations. They had expectations for him. I mean, he was supposed to be the king, right? He was gonna raise them up. He was gonna give them the life they always wanted. Living near the bottom of society, without much money, without no real hope or possibility of a future. Here is a guy who, he's going all the way to the top. And it's good to be king, of course. So it's good to be friends with the king. Can you imagine these disciples who believed this Jesus guy was headed places and they were going to go there with him? He was their best shot at a better life. And you can just imagine growing up poor in a fishing village, and suddenly here's this guy who, wow, he's going to live in a palace one day. And if we follow him, man, woo, that's going to be great. People will bow down to us. They'll wait on us hand and foot, do whatever we say. Honestly, for many, I would just think being personally called by Jesus to follow him, for some of those guys, probably felt like a winning lottery ticket. Like, X-ray glasses, really? Just look at this interaction that some of them have during their time together. It says when they came to Capernaum, he was in the house, and he asked them, what were you guys arguing about back there? I heard you back there. And they kind of kept quiet because they had argued about who was the greatest. They wanted to know, among them, who was going to be at the top when they're all together, sort of who among us is really the best of the best as we're following this king. And soon, they literally just straight up ask him. They come to him, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They say, teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. We've kind of earned this. We kind of weasel our way in here. Jesus says, what do you want from me? They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. Now, what they're saying here isn't some spiritual idea. This was when a person came into power like a king, he had people that sat on both sides of his throne room that sort of shared in his rule. The right and the left of the throne were places of power and authority in the government. So here's these two disciples saying, hey, when you're king, can we be like vice president and like head of state with you? Like we want to be at the top, right? To have those places of honor We're all about prestige and raising up in society and being more powerful and valuable. I mean, have you ever actually stopped to wonder, why were these guys so quick to just drop everything and follow this Jesus guy? Why they just give up their careers and futures and comfort to follow him around and almost be homeless? It was just like, oh, he's cool, he has a really nice beard. Like, what was the reason that was driving them? Could it be that they actually saw Jesus as a chance to climb a social ladder that they never could have otherwise? He was their best hope to improve their life. So of course, many with nothing else to lose were willing to follow him. Yeah, let's go, let's do this. He's a would-be king. Where's he going? I want to go. Including Peter, the oldest of the group, who, we know he was married, poor fisherman, probably didn't have much else. He sees and believes in this Jesus guy that actually thinks this guy is gonna be the king. So he's all on board. Let's go, brash, we're gonna do this. But on board for what? Where is this ship sailing to? And the clues start to pile up for them. When Jesus doesn't act and talk and do things that they actually think that he should do, being the future king. There's a moment you might be familiar with where a rich and powerful young person comes to Jesus and basically like, I want in, I want to be a part of this. And instead of saying, yeah, great, I need some rich guys with influence to help make me king, he basically almost insults him and turns him away and says, go sell everything you have. And when he does this, you can just sort of hear it sinking in with the other disciples. Like, these aren't x-ray glasses. Who is this guy? And Peter looks at Jesus and asks him straight up, whoa, Jesus, like, I got a wife and a mother-in-law at home. I've left everything to follow you, right? I'm out on a limb here, right? My wife thinks that this was a good idea. I convinced her. Like, you're telling the rich guys to go away? Like, what's in this for us? Like, I put all my eggs in this basket, Jesus. Like, I invested my whole life savings in you. Where are you taking us? Is this actually a good investment? And that's where we pick up in John's account. Last week, Brandon kind of got us into chapter 12, the story of anointing his feet, and immediately after raising Lazarus from the dead. And you would think that this is probably part of it for someone like Peter, right? Like, and the other disciples, well, man, he's not acting the way we think he should act. He's saying some weird stuff. I don't know how this is going to work out. But he did raise a dead guy, so I guess we should see where this goes, right, fellas? And so finally, Jesus comes to the capital city, Jerusalem. And when he enters it, the people are in a frenzy. John says they heard that he raised Lazarus from the dead. He's popular, and they actually hail him as a coming king. They throw branches on the ground and shout out to him, "Blessed is the King of Israel." They're excited. And if you're the disciples, you're probably like, all right, this is what I'm talking about. Yes, finally, 3.5 years, we've been walking around with this guy, waiting for this. This is what we've sacrificed for. This is what we've given up for. This is what we've risked in following Jesus to get this. We're on our way to the throne room itself. Yeah. Only now, Jesus turns and starts saying even crazier stuff. What Peter and the others wanted to hear was, all right, boys, our moment's here, right? From now on, it's all fancy dinners and deep tissue massages. Oh yeah, living a good life, high fives. But instead, Jesus starts talking about dying and laying his life down. In John 12, we read this. Jesus looks at him, he says, anyone who loves their life will lose it. What? Well, anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Hate my life? I want to lose. What are you talking, right? Whoever serves me must follow me. And where I am, my servant also will be. If you're my servant, you need to come with me and do what I'm doing. And I imagine the disciples hearing, they're like, oh, hey, hold on. Okay. We get the part about being your servant, all right? Yeah, we're your servant, right? We want to be servants of the king because we'll be rich when you're rich. I get that. We want to go where you're going, Jesus. We definitely want to go. Am I right, boys? Yeah. But what's all this about losing our lives and you dying? Wait, what? I don't quite get that. What is he talking about? Yeah, Jesus, we want to go where you're going. But where are you going? And this is where we land in John chapter 13, where Jesus, now more than ever, clear, plain as day, and vibrant living color, is going to tell them exactly where he's going that he wants them to follow. Let's pick this up in chapter 13, verse 1 through 5. We read this. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. How did he love them? Well, here we go. The evening meal was in progress. The devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus, probably because Judas was like, I'm done with this guy. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come. Look at this. He knew that God had given everything, put all things under his power. That he had come from God and was returning to God. So because God had entrusted him, given all this, it says this, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around his waist. Very interesting picture. He washes their feet. Now, I want you just to kind of picture this with me and try to put yourself in the mind frame of Peter and the other disciples. You've spent 3.5 years of your life invested, following this guy everywhere, risking everything. You know, Peter was risking the ire of his mother-in-law. What's that husband of yours doing, right? It's going to work out. Trust me, it'll be good. Because the whole time, you've believed that this Jesus guy was taking you places. You thought it was worth it. You did what he said, even when it was a little crazy, even it was hard, even you were like, wait, what does he want us to do? I don't know, let's just figure it out. Because you thought to yourself, it's gonna be worth it. He's gonna be the king, and now here you are in Jerusalem. The crowds are chanting the name, Jesus, Jesus. You're walking beside, you're like, yeah, any moment now it's gonna pay off. And suddenly, this guy who you believed was headed for greatness and was taking you with him does something that it must have just made your stomach sink. Like just that sense of like, what did I get myself into? You see, real quick, feet are always gross, but feet were really gross back then. You had dirt roads, everybody walked everywhere, open-toed sandals or barefoot, animals in the street. They didn't have sewage and plumbing, so you would empty your latrines in the road. Walking around in the ancient world just meant your feet were gross. So it was actually customary when you went into someone's home, was there a dinner, a nice location, that they would, when you walked to the front door, they'd have a little basin of water and a towel, and you were expected to wash off your feet. It was just, what you're supposed to do. But here's the real kicker with what Jesus did. It wasn't that just that Jesus did something kind of gross, like, oh, he touched feet, nasty. That's not the issue here. It was this, because it was so gross, because it was such a, oh gosh, what is on your toes, right? People that were sort of lower class or whatever, they were expected to wash their own feet. You were never expected to wash somebody else's feet. There was only one group of people in the entire ancient world that society said, you can wash feet. That was slaves. People who were basically property, indentured servants, who had no rights, no choice, no value, no worth. They were just chattel, they were just property. And so people with means or groups or companies would often have a slave standing at the door when you walked in, and the slave would take the towel and wrap it around their waist, bend down and wash the junk off people's feet. This was the lowliest, most despicable act a person could do. So the only people that were allowed to do it were people that weren't even really people that had no rights. And it was so despised that no upstanding person with any dignity would ever stoop so low and be degraded so much as to act like a slave and wash someone's feet. You would be giving up all of your dignity. You would be making yourself a laughing stock. So here's Peter, right? What? This guy's supposed to be the king. He's supposed to be taking us to the penthouse, to the top of the social ladder. And suddenly, he's acting like someone at the bottom. And we see Peter's response. Jesus comes to Simon Peter and said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Well, no. And Jesus replied, you don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand. It's interesting. We're going to come back to that. Peter's response is, "No, you are not washing my feet, man. No." And I think when you look at his response, he's not saying, "This is gross, Jesus, don't touch my feet. Ew, gross." No, he's saying, you're supposed to be the king, and I'm supposed to be like one of your top people. We're supposed to be making our lives better. Why are you acting like this? If you get down there on your knees and you start washing my feet, you're making yourself worse than my life used to be. I was poor, I was a fisherman, I didn't have much. We lived in a little one-room hut, but I was a free person. I didn't wash people's feet. And I certainly didn't start following you so you could make me do that. This is terrible. Stop it, Jesus. What are you doing? Jesus, I've been following you my whole life. These 3 years, I've given you everything. But I need to know, where are we going? I don't understand what you're doing. You're supposed to be king. Why are you acting like a servant? This is embarrassing. It was beneath him. It was beneath Peter to even think that for Peter to say, "I'm following you," and you're acting like a slave. What does that make me? This is beneath all of us. Get off the floor, Jesus. Stop this nonsense. You're a king, not some grubby, worthless servant. But Jesus looks at him and says bluntly, "Peter, unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Oh, what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? And it almost sounds like if you read it, Peter thinks like maybe his brain is like, oh, okay. Well, maybe Jesus is like talking about being clean. And so Peter's like, oh, okay, well, then wash all of me. Wash my head, wash my hair. And just, no. You don't need a bath. You're clean. That's not what this is about. I'm not literally here because you're dirty. I'm here to teach you something. Okay, what? For the love, what are you trying to teach me? Why is the person that we thought was going to be the king acting like one of the lowest dregs of our society right now? What are you doing? Explain this. And Jesus does. Let's read it together. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes, he returned to his place, and he looked at him and says, "Do you understand what I've done for you? Do you get it? It wasn't about washing you. It wasn't because you're dirty. It was something bigger. You call me teacher. You call me Lord. You basically say like, we trust you. Yeah, you're it. We're following you. Okay, rightly so, for that's what I am. But now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's. I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you." And there it was, displayed right in front of them in real time. This is where Jesus was always leading them. When Jesus said, "The servant must go where I'm going," this is where he was going. It's where he was always taking them. At the end of the day, we see that with Jesus, the servants of Christ, those who follow him, are being called to follow him in serving others. He said, okay, you call me Lord. You're committed to following me and doing what I tell you? Great. Here's what I'm telling you to do. Do what I'm doing right now. And just look at this. He says, very truly, the last line, "No servant is greater than his master, no a messenger greater than the one who sent him." He's basically saying, look, if you are going to call me Lord, if you're going to say I'm in charge, we're going to follow you, I just did this. So I want you to do it as well. In this moment, he's just got them, right? Like they're trapped because if Jesus himself was willing to get down on his knees and debase himself like that, sacrifice all of his pride, dignity, and comfort to serve them, how could they possibly see themselves as better or too good for it if Jesus did it himself? In this moment, he's looking at him saying, guys, I'm not only telling you where I want you to go and what I want you to do, I'm showing you that I'm doing it too. And so if you don't do it, are you acting like you're better than me? That's heavy, isn't it? He went to the very bottom and said, this is where I'm going. Are you going to follow me or not? Imagine that sinking in for them, guys. Just, I mean, like, this is where it was always heading? Oh, so long, fancy dinners and massages and people feeding me grapes, right? Being followers of Jesus was never going to the top. It was never headed to a life of power and luxury and getting what we wanted. It was heading here. A great king is a lowly servant. And then Jesus looks at him and just pounds the nail in the coffin. He says this, he says, a new command I give you. Here it is, guys. Here is my command. I'm Lord, listen to me. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. By this. By what? He just showed us. His command to love one another isn't just to like feel good. Hey, have good feelings about other people. His command to love one another was demonstrated by his willingness to lay everything down and serve them. And then he looks at them and says, so too should you. This is what it means to be my disciple. I know you thought it was going to be, power and prestige and fame and fortune, but no, sorry. This is where it was always heading. Because Jesus was saying, this is where I was always heading. By this you will know, by surrendering your rights, by laying down your wants and your desires and what you want to get out of it. Yikes. This is how the followers of Jesus were supposed to be identified. By showing the world around them a love that gives away wholeheartedly, that seeks the betterment and well-being of other people over themselves. That's what we gave up everything to join in on? I don't know, like these guys were human, right? I'm a human, you're a person. I gotta imagine that was just like, oh, this is what we spent 3 years getting towards? This is why I've been sleeping in the dirt for the last 7 months? Because you want me to act lowly and less? There's no throne room? Oh. Jesus, I thought you were going to be king. And I think in that moment, Jesus would say, oh, yes, I am going to be king. I'm just not the kind that you're used to. And you, my followers, my disciples, my loyal citizens, are not going to be the type of people the world is used to. Those who follow me where I'm going will be marked not by power and prestige, but by the way they lay their lives down for others. For greater love has no one than that. You say, well, wait, so it's not how often I go to church or whether I have a Rise sticker on my car. It's not whether I voted for the right person in November or how much I can leverage my outrage on social media over all the things that are wrong with the world. It's not having K-Love rocking in my earbuds or how many verses I can quote from memory. It's not getting my way and ensuring everyone lives and acts just like I want them to. It's not all about my life being perfect and getting what I want. No. My followers will be known as those who lay it all down for others and love like I've loved. It's as simple as this. In the profound words of the Apostle Paul in his letter to the church in Philippi talking about this. He says this, he said, guys, in your relationships with each other and the way you treat each other, have the same mindset as Jesus, who being very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped or used to his own advantage, but he made himself nothing. He got down on his knees and washed feet. He took the very nature of a servant slave. Being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death. He humbled himself and showed so much love for others that he gave up his literal life for us. And now he's telling us to have the same attitude, the same mindset, because that is what the followers of Jesus are to be known by. And this would have been just as hard to sink in for them as it still is for me and you and I today, right? We've built this up in our heads that Jesus is going to make our life great and awesome, and now he's telling us to lay it down and become less. Is this why Peter was maybe so quick to disown Jesus a few days later, right? Aren't you that guy? No, I don't even know the guy. Was he wrestling with whether or not this was actually somebody worth following? I don't know. Was that why Judas left? And you know, Jesus already knew Judas was going to betray him, and he still washed Judas's feet. Whew. The Jesus that told me to love my enemies isn't talking out of both sides of his mouth. He did it. And so to deny Jesus to all these things, was it coming from a place of just, this isn't worth it? But here's something cool I want to remind you of. Remember that cryptic line Jesus said to Peter? He said, you don't realize what I'm doing, but later you will understand. Remember he said that to Peter? And yeah, a couple of days later, Peter would deny him, but Jesus would bring him back in and restore him. And what's awesome is the rest of Peter's life would be completely different. We see that Peter would actually get it, because he would go on and later he would write a letter to the church named after himself. And look what he says. He says, Peter's writing this later in his life, all of you, everybody, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. And what's cool is in the Greek, this word that we translate as clothe yourself is a word that literally translates as wrap a towel around your waist. It was a slave word. It was the word that they would use when they would speak of that lowly slave standing by the door, preparing themselves to wash feet. The guy who said, never, Jesus, you're not going to wash my feet, would later say, guys, let's all wash each other's feet. At some point, Peter got it. It's one of the coolest things is, despite what must have seemed just a massive letdown to him, an obvious temptation to just give up and walk away and be done, Peter would stick with it and he would come to understand. In fact, the cool thing about Peter is one day, he would spend his whole life giving everything away to people to the point that he was martyred for his faith. And when church tradition tells us that they were going to crucify him, and he said, crucify me upside down because I want to be beneath my Lord. I want to spend my whole life being less, giving away. And this is what Jesus is calling us to. You know, in my own small way, in a very small way, sometimes I feel like I can relate a little bit to Peter. I kind of understand what he must have thought sometimes. When I first became a Christian, I was in college and me and some friends like Brandon and others, we had a band and we were it was a cool thing to start these ministries and things. And I felt God call me to give my life to ministry, to do this as a profession. And the truth is, I had in my mind a certain perception about what that would be like. And in all honesty, it kind of looked a bit like this. That's kind of what I was shooting for, right? I was going to be on stage, shredding my guitar for Jesus, with the speakers blaring and the crowds cheering for me and Jesus. All the cute little Proverbs 31 single girls would be lined up. It was going to be awesome. I'd be preaching in front of massive crowds. They'd be like, whoa, yeah. It was going to be good. But then I actually started in ministry. I took a youth ministry internship after graduation. And I quickly discovered it looked a lot less like this and a lot more like this. I wasn't on stage, no one was looking at me, and the youth pastor wanted me basically just to clean the youth room and set up chairs, which is not what I signed up for. I remember thinking, this guy doesn't even know who I am, right? He's totally wasting my talent. I was like, bro, have you even heard some of the songs I've written? I mean, they're pretty good, right? Wait until you hear me preach. I'm kind of a big deal. So how about you get someone less amazing to go vacuum the floor and let me get on with the real work here. Looking back on that season 20 years ago, I'm just so grateful for his godly wisdom to basically say, nope, and hand me the broom. Because like Peter and all the other disciples, I simply had no idea what Jesus was actually calling me to, where he was really leading me. I thought it was all about me and how great my life would be and what I'd get out of it, when in fact, he was calling me to give my life away. And just sometimes scrubbing toilets was the best way to learn that. And the truth is, guys, he's calling all of us to it. He's calling you to it. He's still calling me to it. Where our King is going is not to the top of the social ladder, is not to the place where we can all get the most for ourselves. He came because he so loved the world, and he's calling you and I to love it with him and to give our lives away for it. But before we end here, and it feels like we just kind of like kicked in the stomach and go home or whatever, there actually was a verse I skipped over. I didn't talk about verse 17. Right after Jesus says all this about loving others and serving the way that he did and doing what he calls us to, he gives us one last crazy but powerful statement. He says this, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. And here it is, guys. Here's the truest, deepest, most profound mystery of Jesus. Jesus didn't say to us, lose your life, period. He said, if you want to find your life, lose it. He said, if you want to be great, serve other people. If you want to be first, choose to be last. And in that, what we see is Jesus isn't saying everything is about complete self-denial, there's nothing in it for you. There is something in it for me. He came and said, I have come to offer you life to the fullest, the kind of life you were made for, the kind of life your heart actually desires. The problem is you don't know how to find it because you're broken and you're messed up. I will come and show it to you. And what he shows us is that we discover the life he's created for when we actually lay this one down and serve people and love people. That life everlasting, the kind of life that God made me for, isn't discovered by constantly fighting to get mine and get more and become greater and more authority and more power. That actually isn't the kind of life God wants for me. It isn't the kind of blessing he has for me. And we know this, right? We see people all the time at the top of the world, most money, their life's a train wreck. Who's happier because they have more crap and more money? Really? Are we still there? We haven't figured it out yet? And here's Jesus saying, actually, none of that will give you the life you're looking for. What will give you the life you're looking for is following me in serving other people and loving the world around you. And it's this beautiful mystery that becomes revealed to us when we choose to follow him and do it. And you know what I'm talking about. You know it. It's in you. You know it. How you feel, how you start to see life differently when you actually choose to live generously and giving away and putting other people ahead of yourself, you know that it's better. You know you're happier. You know you have more joy. You have more contentment living that way. But we're so greedy. We're so selfish. We're so messed up inside. We just can't do it. Serving and loving others, it isn't always fun. It's not glamorous. Sometimes it's just really not easy. But Jesus is saying that's the pathway to the life that you actually want. Come and follow me. Your life isn't better in the palace. Your life will be better when you serve and love other people, and the world will be better. This community, this family that you're a part of will be better when you love each other, when you lay down your lives for each other, when you live in such a way that other people are more important. You create something amazing that you get to be a part of. That's the life God created us for. That's what he's calling us to. And so the question for us as we think about this, do we want this blessing? I think you and I have to ask ourselves the question, are we willing to trust Jesus enough to follow him where he's leading? Are you willing to trust Jesus enough to go where he's telling you to go? Because it's going to be hard. It's going to contradict what you want to do. He's going to say, hey, go serve, go help, give your life away, be generous with your time, your money, all this stuff. Go, live open-handedly. And you're going to be like, no, I want to. Will you be willing to trust him that this is better than this? And that's what this whole series about John is kind of about, isn't it? From the beginning, we've been talking about John's whole point again and again is getting us to believe that this Jesus is worth trusting and worth following, that what he's leading us to is better. That's what the whole book's about. That's what this whole, every Sunday, every online service we've done here has been helping us to see and grasp more and more that Jesus is worth following and he knows more than I do. And when he's calling you to the things that seem like I don't want to do them, I can trust that he's giving me something better that I don't even understand. Guys, he is. The life we're looking for is not found by grasping more and more. It's found by following Jesus in giving more and more, in serving others and loving others. Is that the choice that you're making? If you look at your life right now, honestly assess it. Are you serving? Are you loving? Are you giving? Are you actively doing anything with your time and your resources to help others? Or are you just living life, making money, putting in your own bank account, doing your thing? That's no way to live. And it's not how the disciples of Jesus are called to be identified in the world. So let's start serving. Let's start loving the world. Let's start giving of ourselves, our time, and become the people. Live it out. Show the world what it means to follow Jesus. Not by how loud we yell or who we vote for, but how much we love other people. That is what our King is calling us to. So as we end every time, I want to pray for you that you and I and our whole community, we would wake up and rise and shine. That we would wake up to a King who isn't leading us to the kind of greatness we think we want, but wake up to the King who's leading us where we need to go. And we would rise to life by obeying him and following him and laying our lives down again and again and serving and giving and living open-handed love with other people the way that he did, because he did it and he called us to it. And I almost don't even need to finish the benediction, because when we do that, we will shine like stars in the night sky. The world will see the kind of Christianity they're desperate to see, the kind of Christianity that's attractive, that they actually want to be a part of. Not a bunch of religious people yelling about their rights, but a bunch of people committed to serve and love like Jesus. Let's wake up, rise, and shine to that commitment and see what God can do with us together. Have a great week, guys.